All right, good evening. And again, we're so thankful to all of you that are joining us on today. Again, God be praised for all that He is doing. We're so excited for this session this afternoon. We're excited because, again, we get to share information, but I'm elated because we've got some of Saginaw's finest youth on the stage with some of the best doctors and clinicians in the city of Saginaw. They're going to be here today. I'm Dr. Craig Tatum. I serve as president for the Saginaw African American Pastors. We're here at New Life Baptist Ministries. This is our background. We've come together today to discuss one of the most important subjects that's evolving in our community. It's a constant evolving subject, and that is the condition of COVID-19 or Delta variant or Omicron variant. And the latest discussion is how is the vaccines and how are the variants impacting our youth. So we've got this grand audience with us here today, and we're excited again to have them provide a wealth of knowledge to get us beyond all the misperceptions. And so one of the things I want to ask you to do real quickly is like and share. Come on, just do that now. Push the share button, push the like button so that your friends and your friends' friends know that you're on. Some of you are on because you're supporting your various friends that are here with us on tonight. And so I'm excited, again, to have them here with us on tonight. First and foremost, let me thank again Great Lakes Bay Health Centers of Saginaw. I'm saying of Saginaw, but they pretty much got clinics all across the state, and so they're partnering with us. The Hispanic Coalition, they're partnering with us just as well. I want to thank them. But we're excited because from Great Lakes Bay Health Centers, again, we've got some of their finest doctors and clinicians here to give us some great information. They've made such tremendous impact in this city. They're changing lives, and we're grateful to partner with them this afternoon. To all the Saginaw African American pastors, again, we're grateful that you've given us this privilege to use this platform, again, to have this dialogue on today. And so with the young people that are here, I'm sure they're going to give a shout out. If they don't, I'm going to give it out for them. Hey, if your friends are watching, we're glad you're watching. Call some of your other friends, inbox them, message them, whatever it takes. Let them know that, hey, your friend is on the air. So before we go any further, there's a couple things I need to make you aware of. First and foremost, if you aren't aware, if you are not aware, you can order COVID self-test. The government has a link that you can go to whereby you can order tests that come directly to your home. Many of the tests are already starting to arrive. I know that because I got an email today saying mine would be at my house either today or tomorrow or over the weekend, so I'm grateful of that. Secondly, as it relates to the KN95 mask, and you'll probably hear some of that conversation today, you can pick those up at any of the pharmacies. And let me just say this, in both instances, Great Lakes Bay Health Centers has both of those or will be having them over the next several weeks and months to come. And so if you are interested in getting your own to do self-tests or masks, I think they're already giving them out in the city. I've heard from several friends they've already started picking them up. So you have to stop at a pharmacy or one of the big box stores like Walmart or Myers or Kroger, something like that. So they are available. So I just want you to be aware of those two things. It's free. It's free. Okay, and so the better mask, the better protection. As always, we tell you to sanitize and do all you can to keep yourself safe. And so today, again, we're here with this group. So let me just take this minute again to thank Dr. Long, who is on this side, Dr. Long here, and Miss Heidi. I'm not going to try to kill her name. She'll say that, so I'm going to have Dr. Long tell us a little bit about himself. Miss Heidi's going to tell us a little bit about herself. And then we're going to introduce these young geniuses that are here today. They'll be asking the questions. And so we've got a great moderator that's going to help us. Young man that has his own magazine right here in the city. We're excited to have him as well as these other geniuses. We're glad to have them. So let's have Dr. Long tell us a little bit about himself and Miss Heidi tell us a little bit about herself. And then we're going to go around and have our panelists introduce themselves. So Dr. Long, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Dr. T. It is an absolute blessing and a privilege to be invited to spend the evening talking with you guys about COVID. Lord knows I've spent the last 2 years talking every day about this, and it's usually one-on-one. So it's an awesome opportunity to get to talk to many people at once about something where there is too much misinformation out there, and church should be a place where the truth is told. So I hope we can focus on the truth and spread the good word.
Hello, I'm Heidi Brechtelsbauer. I'm currently the Vice President of Clinical Services for Great Lakes Bay Health Centers. I've worked for Great Lakes Bay Health Centers for just about 25 years. I'm a nurse by training, and since the beginning of the pandemic, I was tasked with managing our COVID response throughout our organization. So I have spent every single day way too many hours talking about COVID. I'd be super happy to talk about something else, but I am happy to be here tonight to try to provide some updated and accurate information on the status of things.
All right, thank you. And without further ado, let's take some time now. I'm going to see if I can get out the way. Let's take some time now to have our panelists introduce themselves, starting with our moderator on tonight. He's going to introduce himself, and then we'll go around with all of our panelists. So let me get out the way of the cameras first. You can introduce yourselves. And then once we go around and introduce ourselves, Brother Moderator, you can start chiming out with questions, and then we'll go from there.
My name is Julian Morris. I'm the CEO and owner of Swag Magazine.
My name is Jada Brown, and I'm in the 9th grade.
My name is Javon Thomas, and I go to Victorious Believers Ministries.
My name is Jada Thomas. I'm a graduate, and I go to New Life Ministries.
So like Dr. Tatum said, we're just here to talk about the state of the pandemic and how COVID-19, Omicron, and Delta has an effect on our children, as well as the vaccine. So we keep hearing that our COVID positive rates are the highest they've ever been. Why are our numbers going up so high and so fast? Are hospital admissions because of COVID going up at the same rate?
Julian's looking at me, so I guess I'll answer the question initially. So, yes, COVID is still here. And yes, tests seem to be coming back positive at a higher rate than they have at any point previously in the pandemic. There are still lots of people being hospitalized. To speak specifically, I will say a word of hope is that in the United States, over the past 2 weeks, our 14-day average for positive tests for COVID-19 is down 28%. That's a good word, and that's where I think we're heading. I think we're heading in a good direction. I think there's going to be less positive tests as more people touch COVID, either through vaccine or through actual infection. Saginaw, on the other hand, right now, our last 14-day average, we're up about 28%. I think a lot of that has to do with where we're at with vaccinations. So Saginaw County is at about a 52% vaccination rate, so we have a lot of people to convince that vaccines are good and healthy and safe, and something we strongly encourage you to pursue. Another thing I do want to say is you have heard maybe that Omicron, the new variant, is mild. That's a word that gets shared a lot. I do want to say that Omicron is milder than previous variants, but not necessarily mild. So we still, as of 5 days ago, Covenant Hospital, the big hospital in the community, was at capacity. There are still many people hospitalized. As of a week ago, we had about 100 people in Covenant with COVID-19. 70% of those people were unvaccinated. In the ICU a week ago, there were 16 people with COVID-19. Of the 16 people in the ICU, 15 of those 16 were unvaccinated. And then the next step up in care is something called being on a vent. That's where a machine breathes for you. This is where COVID is really at its worst. We had 13 people a week ago on a ventilator. All 13 were unvaccinated. So vaccines work. They may not prevent catching COVID, but they do prevent, in many cases, serious disease. So that's kind of a big picture of where we're at.
Can you explain what a variant is, like the definition?
It's really important to remember that COVID-19 is a virus, and this is what viruses do. They change, new variants arrive, some stay, some go away, and you'll never hear about them, but this is normal, expected things that happen when a virus is circulating in our communities.
Can I add one thing? I talk to kids a lot. There's all these weird words like variant or mutation or whatever. Have you guys played video games? Yeah, so your main character, level 1, usually pretty basic, right? As your character goes along, fights new bad guys, gets stronger, picks up new equipment, learns new skills, it gets maybe a little stronger and changes. It's the same character, but it has different characteristics and strengths, right? So we have the same virus that's in our community, but over the past 2 years, as it's infected different people, it's changed a little bit. So for example, Omicron, the one we have right now, and it's 99.7% of COVID in our country right now is Omicron. That's pretty much what's out there. It has changed so that it's more contagious, it's easier to catch, it's figured out how to get into your body, it's learned through fighting, but it's also less deadly, and that's a good word. So we're seeing it infect more people, and hospitalizations are still happening, but ICU admissions have come down a bit. So it's kind of like a character moving through a video game, same thing, but it's changing and learning different tricks as it infects people.
Perfect description, Dr. Long.
What are some of the signs parents should be looking for when suspecting COVID-19 with their child?
So the symptoms of COVID are generally the same for adults and children. We're seeing a lot more people saying that they just have sniffles or a little bit of a sore throat. You know, when COVID first arrived in our community, it was that cough. Everyone was watching for that cough and fever. We're seeing milder symptoms now. We also are seeing it's winter, there's other viruses circulating and infecting people. But you can still get a cough, sore throat, runny nose, congestion, headache, fever. All of those things are known symptoms of COVID.
One of the differences with kids is that kids are more often going to have no symptoms or very mild symptoms when they catch COVID. So, for example, there's been about 2 million kids infected with COVID over the past couple of years. We estimate about 16%, about 1 in 5, have had asymptomatic COVID. What does that mean? They caught the virus, but they didn't have any symptoms. So even very slight symptoms like nose is running or a little scratchy throat sometimes can be an indication that there might be something there, and it's important to test.
Why is it so important for children to get the vaccine?
You're like the vaccine guru. I think I'm going to let you start with that.
We know that the vaccine is a very important, it's probably the most important thing we can do to stop this pandemic, stop the severe illness that we're seeing across the world. And children can pass COVID as much as any adult can. Children can get sick with COVID. Children can pass COVID on to adults who can't fight the virus very well or would potentially get really, really sick. So we need children to get vaccinated as much as we need adults to get vaccinated so that we can stop and continue to fight this pandemic.
So, what are some of the effects that COVID-19 or Omicron has had on children?
Actually, a lot, and a lot of the impact that COVID has had on kids is indirect, not necessarily related to an infection that they've experienced. So I've had a lot of very afraid kids in my office. I've had a lot of very afraid parents in my office. And that fear is usually, I don't want my kid to catch COVID. Or the kid's like, I don't want to catch COVID. And I do want to be very clear that, thank God, COVID doesn't really like to make kids very sick, okay? So they are less likely to get severe illness with COVID than, say, with traditional influenza. We've still had over 1,000 kids hospitalized in the United States with COVID. There's been hundreds of kids who've died of COVID, so it is serious. I don't want to minimize that. But I also want a little word of reassurance that kids tend to do pretty well with COVID. The next question, kind of what Heidi just mentioned, parents are like, well, why would I get my kids vaccinated? I like to think about it like this, and I've actually said this with people in my own church. You know, the number one commandment that Jesus gives us, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And then the second commandment is love your neighbor as yourself. So we don't want kids to get sick. Great, let's get them the vaccine. I got 6 kids. My youngest is 5. Every one of them vaccinated. Did I do it for them? Yes. Do I want to love them? Yes. Is that the main reason I got them vaccinated? Well, I also don't want grandpa and grandma to get sick. Grandpa and grandma on both sides are far more likely to get really sick from COVID. And there is no grandkid that wants to be the reason grandma got really sick, right? And so all my kids were excited to get the vaccine. Not because they were nervous about COVID, because I tried to reassure them that probably won't be serious for them, but they wanted to see Nana and Papa again. So that's a huge reason, parents, to vaccinate your kids, because even though I want to reassure you that the likelihood of severe illness in them is low, they're really good at not washing their hands, they're really good at wearing a mask wrong, and they're really good at passing COVID along. And so the vaccine works great in kids. It lowers 91% effectiveness in kids, and it can protect the larger family too.
I think that's a really important thing to think about is when you're sick, who do you trust? You go to your doctor. You trust Dr. Long to help you make decisions and to treat whatever it is that you need to be treated. I would encourage you to ask your doctors or your nurse practitioners or whoever it is that cares for you, are you vaccinated? Did you get your children vaccinated? Because we've trusted them our whole lives to take really good care of us, and they can provide us really good information. And like you just heard Dr. Long say, he has 6 kids, right? 6?
I guess so, yeah. I still can't believe it.
6 kids, and they're all vaccinated. I have 3 children. They are all vaccinated. As early as they could be vaccinated, I absolutely trusted that that vaccine was the right decision to make for them.
And just one last thing, too, that's important to know. So a couple of things that have happened with COVID in kids we see, and you might want to be aware of this if your kid gets COVID, especially if they're a teenager, it's a little more common. There's this thing called multi-syndrome inflammatory system in children. It's this inflammatory, you get COVID, you get better, and then 2 to 6 weeks later, you get really sick. So that's a real complication that takes place. It's rare. We've only had a few hundred cases in the United States, but it's out there. You should be aware of that. And then the other, again, this goes back to, we don't want, kid doesn't want to bear the burden of guilt of being a part of this spread of this illness. We've had almost 190,000 kids orphaned in the last 2 years, lost a mother or a parent as a result of COVID. The degree of depression and anxiety and just emotional that's come from this pandemic on kids is huge. And vaccines can do a lot to prevent that sort of loss.
So I keep hearing people say that it's not worth it to get vaccinated because of all of the breakthrough cases. If this is the case, are vaccines doing their job, and what are they designed to do?
It is true that we are seeing a higher number of breakthrough cases in vaccinated individuals, people who have gotten the vaccine. We talked about that at the beginning, that this current variant is more contagious, and individuals who've been vaccinated may still get the virus, but they generally don't get as sick as other people, the unvaccinated. So yes, it is absolutely worth it to get vaccinated at this point in time. It is definitely decreasing the severity of illness, so people are not getting as sick as they were previously or when they were unvaccinated. it absolutely is worth it.
How do we know the vaccine is safe for children?
That's a great question. It's a question that absolutely should be asked. I actually like it when parents are skeptical and they come to me with questions, because it means they care about their kids. They want to make sure that we're not just rushing to give medicine or vaccine that we haven't studied, we haven't looked at. I can guarantee you I would never want my kid to have anything that would put them at risk. So one of the things that was exciting about the vaccine approval for kids is, in medicine, doctors like to disagree, okay? We argue over all kinds of stuff. This is the best medicine for high blood pressure. This is the best medicine for ear infection. This is the best medicine for, no, it's not. Yes, it is. And it goes back and forth. When we looked at the data that was submitted to the FDA for vaccines for kids, and the huge committee made up of different doctors and scientists from all over the country got together to argue over whether it was safe to do this vaccine in kids, guess how many people voted to not approve it? 0. Every single person said, this is safe, this is good. There was thousands of kids in the trial for Pfizer. That's the vaccine we use for children. Thousands of kids were enrolled in the study. Thousands of kids got the vaccine. And it showed itself to be 91% effective in preventing COVID infection, and like almost no side effects that aren't the typical side effects. So I always tell my patients, oh, there's side effects. And they're like, oh, really, what? I say, your arm's gonna hurt for a couple of days. It's gonna get a little swollen. You could have a little headache. You're gonna feel tired. A buddy of mine was in bed for a whole day, but you get better after day 1, 2, or 3, and you can't catch COVID from it. So thousands of people were looked at when they approved it. It was a unanimous decision that this is safe, and we've now given about 26 million doses to kids under 18 in the United States. 26 million. And you can bet the news, the media, everybody's got a spotlight waiting for that bad side effect, and so far we haven't seen that, thank God.
Okay, so you talked about the side effects. For Pfizer, is the side effect different, or is it the same?
Nope. The side effects are the same for any of the vaccines that are available, but for the younger kids, well, all kids, 18 and under, we can only give you Pfizer. Definitely get a sore arm. We won't lie to you. Your arm gets sore after you get the vaccine. You're gonna know that you got a shot in your arm. You might be tired. You're a teenager. You might be tired. You probably enjoy that you have an excuse to take a long nap or sleep in super late that next morning. Headache. You can get a little bit of a fever for that day, but those side effects are very short-lived. It is really just a short period of time that you experience those.
So, did you want to add something?
Well, a lot of people also ask about long-term side effects, right? They're worried that, okay, so maybe I'm okay after 3 days, but am I going to turn into a zombie 3 years from now? Or am I never going to be able to have a kid? Or what's the long-term side effects? So, it's important to recognize that this vaccine works. We inject the vaccine into your arm. The vaccine goes into your cell. Your cell processes the vaccine, and then it's kind of like putting paper into a shredder. That vaccine kind of goes away. It doesn't stay in your body for years. It doesn't stay in your body and have long-term effect. It causes your body to make copies of something so that your body recognizes COVID when it shows up, okay? It's kind of like if you're a guard at a bank and I say, oh, someone's coming to rob the bank today, and if you didn't get the vaccine, then I'm telling you, I have no idea what the robber looks like. Just good luck stopping the robber. You're like, okay, and anybody goes by and you have no idea. If instead, you're gonna guard the bank, somebody's gonna rob the bank today, this is exactly what they look like. Now you're ready to catch them. So essentially, it's like you're showing your body a picture of this virus, okay? The picture's not gonna make you sick. The picture's not gonna beat you up. The picture's not gonna tackle you. You just know what it looks like so your body can defend. So we don't actually anticipate seeing long-term side effects from this. It goes in, your body learns it, your God-given immunity gets ready, and then you can defend yourself. But I don't anticipate there being long-term side effects from this. The short-term ones are real. People experience them, but we feel confident about the safety of this going forward.
So should children with any underlying health conditions get the shot?
Absolutely. Those underlying health conditions put you at a higher risk of getting sicker if you were to get the COVID virus. So individuals, kids that have underlying health conditions should be vaccinated to protect themselves, so they're protected if they are to get the virus. Their body knows how to fight off that virus, and hopefully they won't get sick or make their underlying condition worse.
The conditions that put kids at higher risk of complicated or severe COVID are asthma and being overweight. Those have been the two categories of kids that have been hospitalized most frequently. And then diabetes is another thing that we see being involved with complicated or severe COVID more often. So those would be reasons to especially get the vaccine. The time where we wouldn't have somebody vaccinated is maybe a kid who had a severe allergic reaction to another vaccine in life. So they had a shot or a vaccine, they had a super bad allergy, and they had to go to the hospital. So that might be a time when we would pass over that kid. But otherwise, we would encourage all kids, even sick kids, to get the vaccine.
Should parents talk to their children about getting vaccinated, and why is that important?
So would you want your mom or dad to talk to you about the vaccine?
Yeah,
Yeah. How come?
because it's important to get it.
Yeah, it's important to get it, and probably you want to know what your parents think, maybe, I hope. And I would want my kids to know why I think it's good. You know, like when I have rules and I just say, just do it because I'm your dad, that usually leads to like headbutting, But God gives us rules, and it's because he loves us, not just because he wants to make our lives boring or difficult. When I have rules for my kids, it's because I love them and I want the best for them. If they understand it, they're more likely to follow it. So absolutely, we should talk to our kids. Just taking care of our kids is part of loving our kids, and if they understand that, that's a good thing. So all questions should be asked and attempted to be answered.
I want parents to talk to kids about all vaccines and all health-related topics. I think that is probably the key to a lot of healthy decisions that kids make are their parents' attitudes or the information that parents give to their kids.
Can you explain herd immunity and how children are a critical part of this for our community?
Go for it. Herd immunity. You ever heard of that?
Is it when people are immune to the virus?
Yeah. And when there's a lot of people immune to the virus, then people who aren't immune to the virus are less likely to get it, right? So let's say all of us in the room except me had the vaccine. You guys all had the vaccine, right? Then the chance that any of you are sick with COVID is way less. So if I'm in the room, even though I didn't have the vaccine, I'm probably safe, right? So the more people who get vaccinated, the more likely that nobody's going to catch the infection. Now, the trick is this. It takes a lot of people in the room to be vaccinated before we get to what's called herd immunity. So like you think of like a herd of cows or a herd of sheep. I don't know, is that right? I'm not really a farmer. I don't know. So we're all gathered together. If we all get vaccinated, then even the unvaccinated people are safe. And if the virus has nowhere to go, because I'm vaccinated, you're vaccinated, the virus has no place to party. If the virus has no place to party, bye-bye virus. So the more people who get vaccinated, the faster this thing goes away. But until you get to 90%, so it depends on how contagious the vaccine is. So with measles, you guys ever heard of measles? Maybe not. We don't even see it anymore. Why? Because we all got vaccines and it went away. But 95% of a population has to be vaccinated because measles is so contagious. So like everybody. Polio, that's also gone away. Why? Not because we're tough, but because we got vaccines. That's not as contagious, so only 80%. Omicron is thought to be as contagious as about measles. So at this point, we really want everybody to get vaccinated. But the more people get vaccinated, even the unvaccinated people get benefit from that.
If I had a child, how can I identify anxiety or depression in my child, and what do I do about it?
I think this goes back to that same discussion about the vaccine. You know, allowing kids to talk about the scary things they're seeing on the news or hearing at school, or just the changes in their world. I mean, we've all experienced lots and lots of changes since the beginning of this pandemic. So parents allowing kids to be able to talk about that is probably the biggest key and first step to helping deal with some of that anxiety. And of course, you know, we all know that what a parent's attitudes are, and I think it's totally fine for parents to say, I'm scared too. It's okay. It's okay for parents to validate that with their kids.
You know, and the other thing I think about, if I ask my 5-year-old, hey, Matthew, what's anxiety? He won't even be able to pronounce it, probably be like, you know, he has no idea. And our kids don't know what depression is. They don't know what anxiety is, right? They only know that weird feeling inside because things are hard. The most common way, what anxiety usually looks like in a kid, is change. They don't sleep as well anymore. They're not eating anymore, or they're like eating nonstop, and they're not a 14-year-old guy. Emotional outburst, that's like a fancy way for saying they get mad super easy, or they fly off the handle and they're really frustrated, and maybe they didn't used to be that way. So if you're seeing, like, parents, if you're seeing changes in your kid like that, you know, if someone says, oh, are you having anxiety? I mean, they have no idea. But when you see real big swings in their personality, swings like that, that's usually a sign that there's maybe some depression, maybe some anxiety going on.
What kind of mask should we be wearing right now?
So you should choose your mask based on what activity you're participating in. So different masks provide different levels of protection. So a cloth mask that only has one layer of cloth, might be, does that have one or two? Those would be the mask that provides the least amount of protection. So if you know you're going to be in a situation that you're indoors in a crowded with a large group of individuals, in particular if you believe you're going to be in a group that has people that aren't wearing masks, that aren't part of your household, you should choose a mask that is a higher level of protection. So the next level up from that one layer cloth mask is a cloth mask with 2 layers. The next one after that is the kind that I wore in here. So it's what most people call a surgical mask, medical mask. It has a layer that it doesn't let moisture in, and it needs to fit tightly around my nose, and it needs to form around my face as much as possible. Then the next ones up from that are the ones, the KN95s that are getting available in our communities because they fit very tightly on your face, and it keeps the really small particles that has the virus in it from being able will stop you from being able to breathe in those particles.
Is testing for COVID still important, and how should we use the at-home test?
Testing is very important so that we know who has an active infection, so that person can isolate themselves and stop passing that virus on. So the key to testing is to get it done, and if you have the symptoms, get a test so that you can then do what needs to happen to stop passing that virus on. So if you have symptoms of COVID, any symptoms, even very mild symptoms of COVID, you should get a test. If you know that you've been exposed to COVID because you were with someone who is known to have the virus or tested positive for the virus, then 5 days after you were near that person is when you should get a test.
If I have COVID, when can I stop worrying about giving it to someone else? And how much should we isolate within our house if one person is positive?
Sure. Yeah. So this has been a bit of a moving target. Sometimes I feel like everything with COVID has been a moving target over the past 2 years. But where we are currently is if you were diagnosed with COVID, okay, whether you're symptomatic or whether you were somebody who your mom made you get tested and you turned out positive and you feel fine, you have a positive test, you have to isolate, okay? So isolate means don't be hanging out with your buddies or playing video games or, going to school. It means you need to be home, you need to be at least 6 feet away from other people and wearing a mask if you're in a room with other people. And you need to do that for 5 full days, okay? If you are sick on day 5, like you're still sick, you're having fever and all of that stuff, then you would extend that isolation out to 10 days. If you're the lucky person who never really felt sick, then at the end of your 5 days, you are welcome to return to life, so to speak, but you need to keep a mask on for an additional 5 days. So you got a mask covering for a total of 10 days. That would be isolation. Quarantine's a little different, right, Heidi? I'm inviting you to tell them about quarantine.
So quarantine has been, so that is probably the most confusing things that we get questions about. And we follow the CDC's guidelines, which have changed on multiple occasions. So now the CDC has different recommendations based on your vaccination status. So if you are vaccinated and you don't, if you're vaccinated and you have been exposed to COVID, you don't have to quarantine at this time. If you are unvaccinated, you do need to quarantine if you know that you are around COVID. But I would stay tuned because those things have been continuing to change on a pretty regular basis.
I do want to just at this point throw one thing out as a doc who sees patients with COVID. COVID's a little tricky, so sometimes people will get sick in the first 2-3 days and then they start to feel better, and a lot of people just keep feeling better, probably 80% or something like that. But another 15-20% around day 3, 4, 5, they have another blip where they feel sick again. It's important to pay attention to that, right? So if you get sick, you get better, and then, you get sick again, that's a time you should call your doctor or call your clinic or get checked out. Don't just necessarily tough that stage of the illness out.
Okay, what are antibodies, and is it true that someone who has had COVID has more antibodies than someone who has the vaccine?
I'll take it. Okay, so antibodies. Antibodies are like the soldiers in your body that fight the bad guys. So when you get sick, right, this foreign invader comes into your body and tries to take over, your body makes antibodies or soldiers that fight back so that you take out the virus and you feel good again. Now, what's cool is the way God made your body, you don't want to get sick in the future, right? So you got antibodies that hang out and they stand guard. So if this thing shows up again, you're ready to fight. It's true, you get the most antibodies, well, you get a lot of antibodies when you get sick, but you also get a whole lot of antibodies made when you take the vaccine, right? Your body learns what the virus looks like in both ways. The best, actually, is I wouldn't say the best, that's not very nice of me. The people who have had real COVID and have had the vaccine actually have the most antibodies of all. So just because you got sick with COVID in the last 2 years does not mean we don't think you should get the vaccine. In fact, getting the vaccine after you will give you the most antibodies of all. It's the best protection you got. And then on the flip side, Antibodies are really good, and they're ready to fight for about 90 days, 3 months after a real infection, but it drops down. It actually seems to drop down more after natural infection than even the vaccine, because you get 2 doses with your vaccine. Well, now 3 kind of keeps you going. So, so the best thing is get the vaccines, whether you've had it or not, and just because you had it doesn't mean you shouldn't get the vaccine.
So where can I go to get vaccinated or a booster shot or even just to get tested?
So here in Saginaw, we do drive-through testing 5 days a week at our drive-through site at 501 Lapeer. We also do have home tests available. We get them on a weekly basis, and we give them out as long as we have supplies available. We're giving them away to the community. You can, like was mentioned at the beginning, your household can get tests mailed to your house. Vaccines, we have lots of different places in the community to get the vaccine. So we also administer the vaccine at our drive-through site. We administer at all of our offices, and as does the health department. So they're posted on Facebook every week. They're posted on websites. Call our office. If the time we have vaccines or the drive-throughs open isn't available, we just let you come in and we'll give you a vaccine. We just want people to get vaccinated. Whenever you want, I regularly have people in my office just because they wanted to be vaccinated before they got to work or before their kids went to school. So they come into my office at 7:30 in the morning. We vaccinate them so that they don't have to rearrange their schedules to do it. Just give us a call. We will get you vaccinated.
Where is the pandemic going next, and what do you think it will look like within the next 2 or 3 years?
I'm going to be an optimist. So I'm a bit hopeful right now, right? I mean, God is good all the time, right? And God's not going anywhere. So that's the background to all of this. The reason I'm an optimist, in addition to that, this Omicron variant that we're talking about, the new mutation of COVID, that's super duper contagious, okay? That's a bad thing. The good thing is less people are going to the ICU and less people are dying of the Omicron. So the numbers have gone sky high. So right now and over the next probably month or two, everybody's going to touch COVID. Either you touch it through your vaccine or you're probably going to get COVID. It's just really contagious. And that's not good news, but we get to that thing we call herd immunity, right? And I can't say we don't technically get to herd immunity, but we get to a point where a lot of people have had COVID. And if a lot of people have had COVID, COVID becomes less of a threat. So I hope that over the next 2 to 4 to 6 months, the shutdown society pandemic we've been living with for the last 2 years turns more into like what we experience with the seasonal flu, where COVID is here, it's not going to go anywhere, but it doesn't necessarily shut down our schools and shut down our sports and shut down society. It's just kind of a part of life. Most people have had it or been vaccinated, so it's much less of a threat. We don't worry about it as much, and life gets a little more normal. That's my hope and prayer.
I agree. I think it's important to remember that it's not going to be one day that we say COVID's gone. It's going to be something that we learn to live with probably for the rest of our lives. It will be here. The other thing that is hopeful is we're hopefully not too far away from spring, because I hate winter so much that I'd like to make it as short as possible. And we know that that's helpful in our fight against COVID. COVID doesn't survive as well in the warmer months. Plus, we get to be outside and we're not inside with groups of people where we're passing COVID as much as in the summer months when we spend a lot more time outside. So I am hopeful that we are on a path to feeling better about the pandemic in the next couple months.
Does anybody else have any questions? Well, thank you. This concludes this session. Thank you both for coming out here and talking to us. And thank you, everybody, for coming today.
All right. Again, let's thank this great panelist for, again, these great questions. As I told you, they were some great young people with great ideas, great minds. So, again, we thank God for them. Thank God, again, for Sister Heidi and for Dr. Long. Again, we are so grateful that they took time. Let me thank the parents, again, for allowing your children to come out and ask some very tough questions. I've got some great answers. One of the things that Dr. Long said, which struck me was, and he can correct me on this, said 193,000 children today are without parents because of COVID-19. That says a whole lot. And so it's imperative that we get our children vaccinated. We need to talk to them about the reason why they're getting vaccinated, not just for themselves, but for the love of others. There were so many different things Dr. Long talked about, that you can get the virus and then get well, and then I think several weeks later you can get this, and help me with this, Dr. Long, something about an infection or something?
MISC. It's the multi-system inflammatory syndrome in kids. So it's very rare, thank God, but something we should know about.
Excellent. And so there are so many great pieces of information we got today. And this is just one of several sessions coming your way. It is our hope that our children will get vaccinated. By the way, the Saginaw African American pastors will be doing 3 vaccination sites over the next month and a half. But let me remind you, this weekend at St. Joseph's Church, St. Joseph's Catholic Church, this weekend, they will be giving vaccination shots out. They're raffling off an Xbox, a flat screen TV. They're giving away zoo passes. They're giving away a meal pack that will feed a family of 4. They're going to give the kids some toys and some other things. We're giving away gift cards. You don't want to miss that. If you need to do it this weekend so that we can get your kids vaccinated. But coming up in February, starting with Victorious Believers, we've got a site coming up. I think it's the second week in February. 2 weeks later, we're going to be at Bethel AME. Again, doing vaccinations. And then finally in March, we're going to be at New Birth Bible Cathedral. Doing the same things. By the way, there's going to be a food truck there. The first 100 participants, after they get the voucher, can go out and sample from some of the food trucks that are running prevalent in our community right now. You don't want to miss it, okay? The main thing is get a shot, save a life. We're so thankful, again, to all of the pastors. Thank you for giving us this platform. To all the parents, thank you for allowing us to borrow your children. And to all of you that tuned in this afternoon on Facebook, know this, that this broadcast will stay on. You can go back and review it. We're going to broadcast it several more times. We never take these broadcasts off. So if you go to the Saginaw African American Pastors website, you can pick it up. So I'm sure our young people will want to go home and possibly at some point go back and see themselves. And they'll be able to do that. But I hope that you'll do it just as well. Okay, so until we meet again, it's our prayer that God will bless you and keep you. Keep safe, mask up, get the shot, save a life. Let's get unity or immunity in this community. I'll see you real soon. God bless.